Welcome to the Gaia Report. I am Crystal Johnson, one of the co-hosts. Today we have a wonderful show. We will be introducing you to a fascinating Brookline, Massachusetts residence. You will hear some wonderful green tips regarding improvements in your house, as well as how to have a sustainable lunch. So we're going to start the show with a Brookline resident. As you know, I highlight inspirational guests. And one of the fascinating things about our guests is their story. So please join me in welcoming Brookline resident and Navy veteran and EPA specialist, Raymond Cunningham. Welcome to the Gaia Report.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you and I met at the Pierce School PTO meeting regarding a Brookline Annual Youth Climate Adaptation Challenge that I put on. And it was really wonderful then to meet you and learn so much about you. And I'd love to share your story. So can you tell me a little bit about first, what you do and how you got there?
Where I work?
Yes.
Yeah, so how I got there, in all honesty, it starts a long time back, but the short version of it is that I was working at the town of Brookline beforehand.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And while I was working there...
well, how long were you with the town of Brookline?
Oh, okay. I was with the town of Brookline for about 2 years.
Okay.
And while I was there, I was doing weights and measures sorts of things. And
Okay.
it was due to one of the veterans that held the job prior to me, and he basically taught me the ropes of it. I studied up, took the exam, passed the exam, and then he decided shortly thereafterwards to retire.
Okay.
So I sort of stepped into that position doing what he was doing before, and it sort of was passed on because the next person that took over was in the same sort of situation.
Oh.
So yeah, it's nice. So from there, I realized that my son was getting to the age where he was capable of taking care of himself more often.
Okay.
I was a stay-at-home dad, working part-time for the town.
Yay, stay-at-home dads. That's great.
I loved it. In all honesty, I loved it. In the beginning,
I can
it was
imagine.
very difficult. I'm not going to lie to you. But I truly loved it.
It's a priceless time.
It is.
It really is.
And there are moments that I truly miss it. But life has stages, and life has a reason for which way it blows you or pushes you and what direction it pushes
I mean, I can understand because initially with my son Aspen, who's now 10, I was planning after I had them to take time off from work and then to go back at home. And actually his dad was going to be a stay-at-home dad. Plans got totally turned around, and I still was able to be a stay-at-home mom until about 3, but it was a change. And I was so happy I made it.
Yeah.
And it's priceless time.
Yes.
And so it's wonderful to hear other people who, for different circumstances, how it comes to be, but then you embrace it and you're like, this is just an amazing time frame.
Yeah, it is. It's. I think one of the greatest things that I enjoyed about that period of spending it with my son is that I had a chance to relive some of the parts of my childhood that I really, really enjoyed, and it was just seeing things through his eyes. It was just.
That's so
brings,
great.
It brings something to you that's unexplainable, in all honesty.
That's great that you got to experience
Yeah.
it. And then you moved into a new profession?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like I said, I found that my son was getting to the point where he was quite capable of being on his own, and he could stay in class for longer periods of time than he initially started. So I started applying for full-time positions, and the one that gave me the warmest response was the EPA, and
that's great.
I found a place that I consider home now.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm quite happy with it.
Now, speaking of home,
Yeah.
Brookline, Massachusetts is your home. Now, how long have you lived here, and how did you end up here? It's always, Brookline is such a diverse population.
Yeah.
It really does, especially here in Brookline Village. And so how people ended up here is always a fascinating story. So I'd love to find out, how long have you been in Brookline?
We've been here for 7 years.
Okay.
And when we originally started out here, I think what you're speaking about is what kept us here.
Okay.
In all honesty, because it felt like it was very accepting, very warm, and very inclusive, and we like that because, my wife being from Ecuador and us speaking another language at home, it makes it easier when that environment is there.
Yes.
In all honesty, but I was originally before we came to Brookline.
Okay.
I was originally studying at Rutgers University.
Okay.
And I was taking things in environmental health, and I was taking things that were related to Spanish, which was my major, and I was also taking things that were related to elementary ed.
Oh, wow.
And that was where I was spread pretty thin in that
Right.
time frame, but I was studying, and I was really enjoying it because it was the first time that I had a chance in my life to truly dedicate myself to just studying.
Right.
And I was just taking everything in. And I
That's wonderful.
had some great professors, and I had a lot of great experiences. And I went to, me and my wife, we sat down, and just like any sort of serious conversation, my wife got to the point where her status as a citizen here in the States, she could start working.
Oh, wow.
So she
That's
got
great.
to that point where she could work.
Right.
And she started applying everywhere. She's like, I said, I'm a student.
Right.
I'm a person that can follow you anywhere you go.
Ah.
So she applied everywhere, and
Right.
she cast her net as far and wide as she wanted.
Right.
And the strongest response, and the one that she felt strongest linked to, was Children's Hospital.
Oh, that's great.
So when that initially happened, she came up here and started living here in Brookline
Okay.
for a short period of time, renting out it was like a sublet.
Okay.
And she fell in love with the community here. And who am I to tell my wife,
Right.
no, this is not going to happen? So she fell in love with the community here, and we stayed. And we had a lease for 1 year, and then the 1 year, now we're here 7. So that's
It
just the way it
happens.
happens, right?
Oh, that is exciting.
Yeah.
Now, while we met regarding an interest in the environment, you professionally, also with the school, being engaged in some of the activities there, you mentioned you were at Rutgers and
Yeah.
you were going down or considering a path in environmental health.
Yeah.
Now, what led you into an interest in the environment? Is there something from childhood or influences? How did that organically advance?
I don't know. That's a good question. In all honesty, I know that there was a big push in the time frame that I was getting out of the military in about 2006. In between then and when I actually started to study, which was somewhere around 2009, there was these big pushes during in politics, if you
Right.
will, or in that presidency. There were big pushes for green things. And I figured, with my background in the military as a mechanical engineer,
Oh, that's wonderful.
that things like that,
Right.
it would be a good mesh. And I thought, why not push myself out in those
Right.
those beginning semesters, because that's the time where you're basically trying to define yourself as a
Right.
student, which direction you're going to go.
Right.
And I just figured, why not cast my net wide on purpose,
Right.
so that I get a chance to experience the most that's possible out of this situation.
Right.
That's what university is for, right?
It is. And it seemed like you've really cultivated, rich life experience. As mentioned, you are a veteran
Yeah.
in the Navy, and you just mentioned in mechanical engineering, or was a focus.
Yeah.
And we had mentioned earlier when we were talking that it's really wonderful to have you as a veteran, and it also highlights that, veterans are an array of ages.
Yeah.
And that here in Brookline, there is a really active group. Can you give them their name? It's American Legion.
Yeah, so we have the American Legion that's
Okay.
right over there at the corner of School Street and Washington Street.
Yes.
So you have the American Legion and the VFW. They
Okay.
both meet in the same building. It's a place that I've been going to for at least the last couple of years. It's when I first came here as a resident, I didn't initially get started in that because, like you said, there's many different generations,
Right.
and I didn't know if I necessarily belonged, or
Right.
I felt as if I fit. But since I've been there, to be honest, I feel like I missed out on something waiting so long, because there are so many people there, and obviously they're not all the same as me.
Right.
But the generations from just a short while ago, we had generations from World War II to Afghanistan
Wow.
and Iraq and things
Right.
like that. So I mean, you can figure you have people there that are as young as, well, in their teens or
Right.
their early 20s, to gentlemen that are in their late 80s and early 90s.
Right.
So I mean, yeah, it's the gamut is the array is quite wide. Yeah, there's a lot of different age groups there, and with that comes a lot of different experiences and a lot of different wisdom. I mean, a lot of wisdom in that room. Yeah. So I mean, from that perspective, like I said, I feel silly that I didn't get involved in that earlier, in all honesty. And there's great things that we try to get involved in the community, and that civic duty, if you
Yes.
will, that sort of thing.
That'd be wonderful, because one thing you also mentioned, that when you were at Rutgers, aside from the Spanish as well as the environmental health. You mentioned also maybe education.
Yeah.
And so youth, and we met at an activity regarding like youth engagement, and it seems that also with the American Legions there's a component that they focus on regarding youth and engagement. Could you share that? Because it offers something really rich that I think a lot of our viewers in Brookline would be interested in.
Yeah, so there's this is going to be the first year that we've started this.
Okay.
There was a large donation, if I remember correctly, by the owner of the Patriots.
Oh,
Who's
wonderful.
a Brookline resident as well.
Yes.
So they started up this new scholarship where
that's huge.
the American Legion is looking for applicants or people to apply for this scholarship. And it's not limited to people that are only in high school, which is
Okay.
one of
Yes.
the guidelines.
That's-
So one of the things that we did do is we tried to streamline it to Brookline. That doesn't
Okay.
mean that you have to live in Brookline to apply, but
Okay.
At some point in time you had to have graduated from Brookline maybe.
Okay.
Or
Yes.
you could have been a resident in Brookline
Yes.
and went to a private school,
Yes.
possibly, things along those lines. But I believe, if I remember correctly, it's the last 2 years. In other words, if you've
Okay.
graduated and you've gone on, because some people, their path is not direct.
Yes, that's
it's,
true.
it's sort of circular,
Right.
And we're trying to encompass or include those students as
Sure.
well, so they get a
Oh,
chance.
that's great.
Yeah. So if you lived in Brookline, if you're currently going to school, like a junior
Right.
or a senior, you have a school that
Yes.
you're intending to go to, you have
Right.
an acceptance letter, that
Right.
sort of thing. We want you to apply for this, and you can go to the American Legion here in Brookline. If you just
Okay.
Google search that American
Yes.
Legion in Brookline, you'll find it. We're setting up where we're going to have a link attached to this, and applications have to be in by May, the way I
Right.
understand it.
We will have at the end of the show an email address posted. So you're saying that there is a college scholarship
Yeah.
available from the American Legions here in Brookline
Yeah.
for people who have graduated from Brookline
Yeah.
High School or live in Brookline or currently are students that are seeking financial assistance or award for college. Is there any information you can give us regarding the criteria or what is required?
Well, in all honesty, this is our first year, so it's
Exciting and open.
It's exciting and open. In all honesty, we're trying to be we're trying to offer it to anybody
That's wonderful.
that's
Passionate.
interested. In all honesty, there is an essay format,
Yes.
and that's going to be heavily weighted in the
Sure.
process, the application process. But we're looking to see if the way I understand it, or the way I remember it correctly, if I remember it correctly, is we're looking for people to talk about or speak about civic responsibility or
wonderful.
civic duty, because it's
Yes.
something that is sort of in step with what we
Yes.
do there at
Yes.
the American Legion and the VFW. So
Oh, that's wonderful. And you said the deadline is in May.
May, it's in
Oh,
May.
that's great.
But it'll be all there on the link.
Okay, beautiful. Oh, that is great.
Yeah.
So then, one of the things that we had in common, of course, was our interest in the environment professionally, but then also just with our like day-to-day, life.
Yeah.
And it seems that you and your family, you are a cyclist. You have a very interesting bike.
Yeah.
And so, can you just share like how you use your bike? Do you have a car?
No, we don't
Okay.
have a car.
Okay.
There's a funny story behind that,
Sure.
in fact. When we first moved to Brookline, we did, because we lived in Jersey beforehand. That's where Rutgers is, of course. But we lived in Jersey, and there, to get to things, you
Right.
pretty much need a car. You can't use mass transportation like we can
Right.
here in Brookline.
Right.
Another reason why we fell in love with this place in this town, because it feels very, very close.
Yes.
But the one winter, this was at least 5 years ago.
Okay.
One winter, we had our car parked in a non-covered space.
Okay.
And me and my wife went there, and snow had come and fallen. We had at least 3 snowstorms since we had seen our car.
Right.
So we went to go get our car and use it for the first time after 3 or so snowstorms.
Right.
And it was literally, the ice was this thick around the tires. I couldn't get the car out. So we chipped and moved ice and cleared the snow off, and it took us almost 2 hours.
New England
to do it.
winter.
Yes, it took us almost 2 hours to do this. And in the process of doing this, we looked at each other insanely and thinking, when was the last time we used the car?
Is this worth it?
Yeah, exactly. So I did a little bit of research, and we looked at car sharing applications, and we looked at other options about mass transportation and cycling, and we weren't really big into cycling at the time when we first moved here, in all honesty. I did it when I was younger, but as an adult, it's a different thing.
Yes.
So we made a decision to go that route, and when our son was born, cycling became a big thing because now it's how our family could get around all the time.
Right.
Yeah, it was great. It was truly great. So we bought a bike, and when I say we, me and my wife together, we made a decision to get this tandem. And if you've been around Brookline, you've probably seen us. This is a yellow, very long tandem that it's quite interesting because my son sits up in front, and he's quite happy about telling other people at any chance that he can that he's the captain because that's the person that sits up front.
Naturally.
And I'm the stoker because that's the person that sits in the back. And he'll ring his bell, and it's funny because I thought when we were getting this bike, I was thinking, I want him to spend as much time with me as I possibly can get out of this sort of situation. It felt like it was me centered at the moment, but I wanted to pass on the passion of cycling.
No, it's very true.
Which is a big deal, and it just turned into this thing where he loves it. He loves it, and he wants to go out all the time. Like, all I have to say is, I'll be like, let's go do this. And we'll use the yellow bike. Oh, I'm ready to go. Let's go. So
that's a trigger.
Yeah, if that's what I have to do, I'm all for it. That's a great thing.
No, it's nice. We don't have a car either. I did have a car before because I lived in upstate New York and had to have one, but then loved also Brookline being by the buses and the T, and you can just also walk if you really wanted to into Boston. And I also have a zip car use, so I can have something if I need to, and then I can borrow a car from other people in the area if I also have a backup. But my son and I, we bike a great deal, especially in the summer or spring, through fall. And thinking about it, like for our weekends when we have to run out and do errands or shop, it's just like, it's really nice to be like, that's our reality is, biking. And we also know that it also has a huge health impact, where there are a lot of things correlating public health to environmental health and vice versa. And so for the bicycling, it does, minimize so many environmental issues and cost issues, but it has great exercise and, family like dynamic time. And so it's really nice.
It's a win-win all around, in all honesty. I know. It's not for. I get it. It's not for everybody though either.
That's
because
true.
There are certain limitations. I mean, I can't put my father on a bicycle at his age. So
Right.
I get it. It's you do the best that you can with what you got. At the same token, I get that.
Yes, and then I know I was thinking about one time when I was riding. I'm like, you're right. It's not for everybody.
No.
And then like, at what point do you say, okay, let me really just get a zip car because you have to balance it.
Yeah.
But it is really nice to have that freedom, at least here in Brookline.
Yes, it is, and that I think is the biggest. That was the biggest selling point for us, and everything felt so close. We felt connected.
Right.
These sorts of things, and I think that's a major reason why a lot of the viewers probably stay in the town as well because of that community feeling.
Right.
So. So what brought you to Brookline?
Oh, that's interesting. I'm actually from Brookline.
You're from Brookline?
I was away for a while, so my family's from Massachusetts.
Okay.
And initially lived in Framingham.
Oh, okay.
And also my mother taught in Wellesley. I went to school in Wellesley. And then we moved to Brookline, in the 80s. And I could go here, or I could also stay, in Wellesley. And at the time, though, I did stay in Wellesley. And we were here pretty much since around 85 or... Yes, since 1985.
Wow.
And so this is home. And then I left. I went to California, Berkeley for school, and then went further, west to Hawaii for a little bit. And then I came back originally in the 90s, worked in the environmental field at the Massachusetts Aeronautics Commission, as well as also at the time AECOM, engineering firm, doing environmental planning. And then I took off again. And then I came back when Aspen was about almost, 2. And that was about, 8 years ago. And I knew when I had, Aspen before, then I'm like, how am I going to get back to Brookline? how am I going to get back to Boston area? And then your life just sometimes happens.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I'm going back. And just really happy to be here and to raise Aspen. So Brookline is really home, not just because now and where I'm raising my son, but also just how I've just grown up.
Yeah.
You know?
And certain places just feel like
Right.
home.
Right.
And in all honesty, there was times that we would go back to Jersey and it would feel like home.
Right.
It's not the case now. Brookline's home for us
Right.
now, and it feels
Right.
like home. But before there was, you can understand there's certain reasons and emotions
Right.
attached to home.
It truly is.
Yeah.
And one of the many things that I also love about Brookline is we're very active, you know, in activities here.
Yeah.
And it seems that there's so many great residents who have, you know, professional interests and then just personal insights on things that, you know, they value regarding sustainability. And I know we've talked and love to share from your experiences some tips or anything that you would love to share that you could offer to people who are just, you know, may not be doing anything or maybe doing something that can complement it. So love to hear your insight for what you'd love to share.
So some of the stuff that I took from a pamphlet that we hand out to elementary school students. And I tried to go that direction because I figured some people in your show might be of that level, and I want to make
Yes.
sure to include them. So, I mean, one of the things that we do at our house with our son
Okay.
is we try to encourage him to not waste resources.
That's smart.
So in that, there's simple things like turning out the lights when you don't need to have them on.
Yes.
When you're brushing your teeth, don't have the water running. When you're washing your hands,
Yes.
don't have the water running, because
Yes.
you can turn the faucet on, wash your hands, or start washing your hands, get them soap and lathering up, and then have the water off while you're lathering your
Yes.
hands up, and then turn it back on to rinse them off, sort of deal. We encourage him to do things talking along the lines of resources and how to save them and not use less of them, if you will. When he was younger, he used to take baths in the tub.
Right.
And as he got older, we pushed him to the shower when he could stand up on his
Right.
own, sort of deal. So since he's been, I don't know, a year old,
Right.
he's been taking showers, which tend to consume less water when you're doing those sorts of things.
And that's an important fact because not many people really may not think about that.
Right.
But it does.
It can, yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
You're not taking a 30-minute,
Right.
you know,
You're
shower.
not taking a 30-minute shower, but at the same token, if
Yes.
filling up a bathtub, it
Yes.
can consume a lot of many gallons of water.
Yes.
Right. So I mean, simple things like that, like you talked about before, or we spoke of before, ride sharing, not using it if you don't have to,
Right.
sort of deal. And in other words, if you need a car, use a car.
Right.
And it doesn't mean those of us out there who had a car or
Right.
have a car right now are bad for
Not
doing
at
that.
all.
That just means that if you have one, say, hey, today's the day. It's nice out. Let's
Right.
go for a walk and do
Right.
that way. If you got a day that you can saunter, sort of deal.
Yes.
Um,
Now, one quick question. So
shoot.
you mentioned ride sharing. I
Yeah.
know of here in Brookline, Zipcar, and there are a few other like models out there. Was there anything that you were thinking about or investigating
Well,
regarding
no,
ride
I mean,
share?
when we first got into this, Zipcar was the only one that was
Yes.
there, and then Enterprise did it for a short period of
They
time,
are.
and then they've retracted.
Oh, they have?
They've sort of they've made their footprint, if you will, smaller.
Okay.
So they used to be quite big, and now they're a little bit. They shrunk back down.
Okay.
But there's obviously things like Lyft and
Yes.
and the other one, which is Uber. But I mean, we use those sorts of things
Got it.
from time to time when we need them. Because obviously, when you're in a situation, an emergency, nobody's going to say, "I'll be there in 45 minutes. It could take me 15, but I'll be there in 45." Right? So simple things like that. Right? Logic does apply in this situation, the circumstances.
That is true.
Right? So, other than that, that's pretty much it for us. I mean, we do rent cars every now and again when we do
Okay.
things. We tend to be, from our perspective, we tend to be active. So we'll
Right.
do things like we'll go skiing, and sometimes you can get to ski places. And it's easy to do it via bus, and it's easy to do
Yes.
it via train, and there's options like that. But when you have a child that's trying to make a nap at a certain time frame, and you're trying to
Right.
square peg round hole, sometimes it just doesn't fit. So
Right.
we rent cars
Yes.
and we do things like that to get to mountains and get back within time frames. So I mean, there's things
It's a
like
smart
that.
approach.
Yes.
A realistic
right,
approach.
Exactly. Realistic, yes, and logical. So I mean, there's things like that. Other ideas to do at home is most people do it, and they don't even think about it, but recycling is, it's something that kids can get involved in. I mean, one of the things that people here in the town probably, I would say the majority don't know.
Okay.
Most people, I would think, should, but maybe the majority do know. How do I word it this way? More people should know that don't. Is that there are places that you could recycle thin films, for example.
Yes.
Which are plastic bags.
Yeah.
There are times in the year that we have swap athletic equipment for
Yes.
elementary school kids.
Yes.
This is a way of reusing things instead of tossing them or getting rid of them.
Climate Action Brookline's
Right.
Climate Week.
Exactly.
This year, like April
And
7th,
that's the
that
same
week in
time frame when
2008.
they're going to be doing
they do a lot.
that equipment swap.
Yes.
There's styrofoam collection, because that is one of those things that
I wasn't aware of that there.
they
Wow.
do that. They do that through the town and public health. They collect CFLs. They collect sharps, which
Wow.
are basically the things that people use to give themselves diabetic insulin and
Yes.
things along those lines. They collect those at the public at our public health building.
Oh, that's amazing.
There's other things there. My answer is if you think you can't recycle it, figure it out.
Right.
Because prove yourself wrong that you
Right,
can't.
right.
There are certain things out there that are pretty difficult. I mean, like you can go to Whole Foods and they recycle number 5 in
Yes.
certain spots. But there are just certain plastics that are just not going to be. Like you buy your frozen fruits
Right.
and it comes in a bag that feels
Yeah.
like it's thin film, but it's not
not.
thin film. And it just has some additives to prevent your food from going bad faster. So I mean, there's things like that. And it's, I try to take these moments to understand it myself, so that when Sebastian gets to the age where he starts asking questions about
Yes.
these things, that I can give him answers that are based on fact,
Right.
not just what I do or don't think I know.
Right.
Those sort of things. So recycling is a huge deal. I mean, and not everything can be recycled, obviously, but those things that can, if you put those into the recycling bin and then they go into a single sort and they get over there, it makes it easier for them. I mean, there are simple things that even for recycling that you could do that's one step further,
Right.
that minimizes the amount of stuff that gets actually thrown in the trash. For example, a tissue box.
Yes.
A tissue box it's a combination of carton
Okay.
and thin film. The thin film is
yes.
the portion
Yes.
that holds the tissue in
Right.
place. So if you were to remove the thin film and put that in with your stuff that you're going to return to the thin film with all the thin films together, you could actually make something that's complex, very simple afterwards, because
Right.
now it's just paper.
Right.
Now, obviously, they're not going to reject that because of it, because there's a certain amount of plastics that end up in almost all of our, right? Because it's just so common
Right.
at this point. But I mean, there's techno trash. Most people don't
Yes.
think about it from that
Yes.
perspective, but
Yes.
the town receives techno trash at our dump site if you take it out there. So I mean, there's so many
Well, that's
different
great to
things.
know.
Yeah, there's so many different things that if you decide that you think it can't be recycled, do some research. I bet you can.
It's very true, because I'm sure people think it cannot be, and I'm like, well, I'm sure people have been in that position too, and that there really is some sort of place for you to go.
Yeah.
There's something. Someone else has had to deal with that problem, came up with some solution.
That's right. Yeah, and that's what it comes down to. I think, in all essence, we didn't start out recycling as many things as we do
Right.
now.
It
It's
expanded.
just somebody said, "Wait a second, why don't we recycle this?" And
very
they figured
true.
out a way to recycle it.
It's very true.
Right. So I mean, that's the way it goes.
I think those are wonderful tips.
Thanks.
You had mentioned conserving the water and the electricity for also the shower versus a bath,
Yeah.
as well as also the recycling.
Yeah.
And then also looking at, transportation and, getting around. And was there anything else that we covered?
I'm sure there's lots of things out there, but in all honesty, I can't remember that well.
But I want to thank you so much. It was really great to have you, Raymond, on the show. Love
great.
highlighting very interesting people who have had a journey in life that have led them to, being in Brookline, doing very interesting work, how they're raising their family. And it's just really great to meet you. And I look forward to having you and your wife and Sebastian on. So on behalf of Mother Nature, thank you, and thank you for being a veteran, or thank you for the contributions you've made, and really glad to have you here.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you having me here. It was incredible.
Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Hi, I am Aspen Johnson Zagar, the co-host of the Gaia Report. School has started. One big issue regarding school is packing kids' lunches. Did you know that plastic surfaces that touch food can leach unhealthy chemicals into a child's school lunch? There are a few non-toxic and safe products to use when packing your kid's school lunch. For drinking options, think about reusable stainless steel or rubber-wrapped reusable glass bottles. For food, consider using wax paper, sandwich bags, or reusable plastic-free cloth and sandwich and snack bags. If you have to use plastic baggies, think about wrapping the food item in a napkin to serve as a buffer. Protect your child's health and think about how you pack their food. It matters.